Okay, just imagine. Think about a world where AI could spot diseases maybe years earlier than we can now, or help your doctor make these super precise decisions, tailored just for you. That's the really exciting potential, the transformation we're talking about with AI-enabled software as a medical device AI SAM-MD. But, and this is the big but, the speed of AI innovation is just completely blown past our ability to create consistent rules for it. So what we have now globally isn't really a clear roadmap. It's more like a patchwork of different rules, sometimes even conflicting ones.
And that patchwork, it might sound like some abstract policy thing, but it actually creates real problems for you, the listener. For the companies making these things, it's a real headache. It slows down innovation, makes it harder to bring those amazing new tools to the market, which then, of course, limits your access, potentially, to those cutting-edge technologies we're all hoping for. And there's another worry, something called regulatory arbitrage. Basically, companies might look for countries with looser rules to market their products, maybe even ones that aren't quite as safe. That's obviously not what anyone wants.
Exactly. This lack of harmony isn't just like inconvenient. It's a serious roadblock to getting the best out of AI SAMD. So that's what we're doing in this deep dive. We want to unpack why getting these global regulations aligned is so vital. We'll look at what different places are doing and maybe most importantly, what needs to happen next to sort of untangle this whole situation. Okay, let's get into it. So when we talk about this global patchwork, it's because different places are developing ways to manage risk based on risk levels, but the specifics, how they actually do it, well, that varies a lot. It's like everyone agrees we need a bridge, but they're all using different blueprints.
That's a great analogy. And it's fascinating how different the blueprints are, even if the goal managing risk is similar. Let's start with the United States. With the FDA, they use what's called a sectoral model. Basically, if a piece of AI software is meant to, say, treat, diagnose, cure, mitigate, or prevent a disease, the FDA sees it as a medical device. Doesn't matter if it's analyzing an MRI for strokes or maybe even an app on your phone. They also make a distinction between SAMD, that's software as a medical device, like the stroke tool in SIMD, software in a medical device, which is part of the hardware, like software running an X-ray machine. And what's really key for the FDA is their total product lifecycle approach, the TPLC. It means they don't just approve it once and walk away. They monitor it from the very beginning, through development and all the way through its use in the real world. And for AI specifically, they've brought in something called predetermined change control plans, or PCCPs. These are honestly quite innovative because they tackle that core issue. AI learns and changes. So instead of needing a whole new approval every time the AI updates itself within defined limits, manufacturers can get certain plan changes pre-approved. It acknowledges that AI isn't static. Okay, now let's hop over to the European Union. Their approach has a very strong human-centric philosophy. You really see this in their big AI Act, the AIA. This act sets up 4 risk levels for AI. Unacceptable risk, things like AI manipulating behavior, those are just banned outright. Most AI FAMD, the medical stuff, falls into the high-risk category, and that means really strict checks and assessments. Then you've got limited risk, where the main thing is transparency. You need to know you're interacting with AI. And finally, minimal risk, which doesn't really have extra rules. And importantly, this AI Act doesn't exist in a vacuum. It works alongside their medical devices regulation, the MDR, and also GDPR, their big data protection law. And if you look at China, their system is quite different again. It's very dynamic, very proactive, and definitely top-down from the government. They're trying to balance pushing innovation, really aiming for technological leadership, but also maintaining social stability. They put a lot of focus recently on algorithms used for things like content recommendations and also synthetic content, deepfakes, generative AI. They tend to react really quickly when new tech emerges. And for companies outside China wanting to sell there, the software registration process can be quite demanding, very stringent. And finally, let's touch on Australia. They regulate AI as a medical device, mainly through their existing laws, overseen by the Therapeutic Goods Administration, the TGA. They lean more towards a principles-based framework for AI ethics, which is currently voluntary. The TGA steps in if an AI tool fits the existing definition of a medical device, diagnosing, preventing, treating, etc. What's interesting there is how proactive they've been with regulating things like generative AI, say a medical chatbot, when it's used as a medical device. They're asking for solid clinical evidence, technical proof that it's safe and performs as intended. They're not waiting around.
Right, so we've got the US with its life cycle approach and PCCPs, the EU with its risk tiers, China being very top down, Australia using principles and existing laws. Okay, so after mapping all that out, what does this variety actually mean for you, whether you're a patient or part of the healthcare system? Well, this diversity, it creates real headaches for companies trying to operate globally. It definitely can slow down innovation because navigating all those different rule books, all that compliance, it takes time and money. And the end result for you could be slower access to potentially life-changing medical tech. It just really underscores why we need a more joined-up approach.
Exactly. But here's the interesting thing. Even with all these different approaches, when you dig down, there are some fundamental building blocks that everyone agrees, or should agree, are crucial for any kind of global standard. These core elements are vital, really, no matter what specific regulatory structure a country puts in place. They're the non-negotiables. Let's break those down for you. First one, transparency and accountability. This isn't just jargon. It means the makers have to be able to explain how their AI makes decisions, especially the high-stakes ones. That requires detailed records. What data was it trained on? What's the model's design? Who's responsible if something goes wrong? You need clear audit trails. It's fundamentally about building trust. Second is risk management. And this has to be ongoing, continuous, through the AI's whole life. It's about actively looking for and fixing problems like bias situations where the AI might perform worse for certain groups of people, leading to what they call disparate patient outcomes. That's a huge concern. It also means monitoring how it actually performs out there in the real world, not just in the lab. Regulations need to be tough, but also flexible enough to handle AI's ability to change. Third, data security. This is absolutely critical for patient privacy. We're talking strong encryption for data, whether it's stored or being sent, strict controls on who can access it, and making the systems tough enough to resist adversarial attacks, people trying to deliberately trick the AI. You have to protect that sensitive patient information from every angle. Regulators are also pushing for things called privacy-enhancing technologies. Think techniques like federated learning or differential privacy. These let AI learn from data without actually exposing individual patient details. Very clever stuff. And the fourth component is clinical evidence and performance. We need standard ways to measure how well these AI tools work, metrics like precision, recall, and also measures of algorithmic fairness to check for those biases we mentioned. We also need clear guidelines on using real-world data from actual clinical practice alongside traditional trials. And finally, just transparent reporting of how well it works so doctors and hospitals can make informed choices.
Okay, so those four components, transparency, risk management, data security, clinical evidence, that's the common ground, the essential foundation. But recognizing them is one thing. How do we actually build something globally consistent based on them? That's the really tricky part, isn't it?
It is. That's the gap we need to bridge. And there are concrete steps, recommendations we can talk about. First, really embracing international standards. Organizations like ISO, the International Organization for Standardization, and IEC, the International Electrotechnical Commission, are vital here. Think standards like ISO IEC 27001 for keeping information secure, or ISO 13485 for quality management specific to medical devices. Using these creates a kind of common language, a shared framework that both regulators and manufacturers understand. It smooths things out considerably across borders. Second, we need a unified risk management framework, a standardized way to classify AI SAMD based on how much impact it could have on a patient, regardless of where it's being assessed. This needs that continuous risk assessment built in and clear ways to tackle bias and performance issues throughout the AI's life. Third, global data security standards. We really need to move beyond just country-by-country rules here. Common agreements on encryption, who gets access, how to respond if there's a breach, and actively promoting those privacy-preserving techs. Protecting patient data has to be a global effort because data flows globally. Fourth, standardized clinical evaluation criteria. We need agreed-upon metrics and guidelines for judging AI SAMD performance. This includes how to rigorously use real-world evidence and demand transparent reporting. That way, we can actually compare apples to apples, ensuring devices are reliable no matter where they come from. And wrapping around all of this, the fifth point is cross-border collaboration. This is maybe the most crucial piece. It means regulators, manufacturers, researchers, patient groups, everyone involved actively sharing information, sharing best practices, working together on strategies, things like international working groups, shared databases of knowledge. It's really about building those bridges we talked about earlier together.
Okay, so wrapping this up, AI SAMD clearly has this incredible potential to really change healthcare for the better diagnostics, better treatment, smarter systems. But actually getting there, realizing that potential, it really depends on us fixing this fragmented regulatory mess through much better global harmonization.
Exactly. And look, having identical rules everywhere might just be unrealistic, practically speaking. But having a shared commitment to those core principles, transparency, solid risk management,
strong data security, and clear clinical evidence, plus a real dedication to collaboration. That is absolutely essential. It's essential for safety, for effectiveness, and for allowing continued innovation in this incredibly fast-moving field.
And that leaves us with a final thought, something for you to really chew on. As AI keeps racing ahead, especially with things like federated learning, where AI learns across different places without moving data, or edge AI, where decisions happen right on the device, how do we make sure our regulations can keep up? How do we ensure they stay flexible, responsive, and ultimately serve the best interests and protect the rights of patients and the public everywhere? Definitely something important to mull over.